What's up, guys? My name is James. Welcome back to another video where today we are doing another reaction. Um, we are reacting to how WWE failed Roman Reigns from 2014 to 2020. Now, if you have seen my first few videos and my um, videos I made in March, I play WWE 2K, the 2K games, and I'm also a big WWE fan. Hence why I have made little shorts on the WWE World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Undisputed Championship. Um, with first first off, I would like to say when I first watched WWE back in like the earliest of 2018 was like maybe it was like it was like January or something, like the second week of January. I did see Roman team up with Seth, but at first I didn't know like a lot about WWE at that point. It was until like later on that year I was understanding about Roman's character and stuff. But I still liked Roman. I didn't mind his theme song, and I did like the attire he wore. I think I actually did like him with the vest on. Um, but then now years later, from I do see like how it could be annoying from how he's basically just another guy that WWE just pushed because they decided to not build anyone up or just didn't want to build anyone up. And that's just another problem with WWE. They have like a long history of just multiple guys um that they could have pushed or could have been like great superstars and faces of the company, but instead he decided to not do much with them. And Roman Reigns is a good example about that since I don't know why they never prepared this. They could have done it with a lot of other people, but with Roman, they just kind of dropped the ball with him until his tribal chief gimmick. And even then, that wasn't even their decision. Um, when Roman returned, he said he wanted control of it. He wanted to like do it his way. That's why we have the Roman now. From this Roman, it was just a whole bunch of cringe and a whole bunch of nobody cares. But anyways, the original video is by Wrestling Gifts. And let's continue on the video.
It's
Jesus,
2023
okay,
and Roman Reigns has officially reached 1,000 days as Universal Champion.
this is
As he sits
crazy.
at the top of the mountain, he's no longer the big dog, but now he's the head of the table. He is now the tribal chief. Roman Reigns
I wonder when he loses it or when he turns babyface. I wonder where they're gonna go from there.
for the past few years has finally become the main attraction in pro wrestling, the top draw in the business, the needle mover, the main event. He has finally become the face of the WWE. Since the day he walked into the business, this was supposed to be the end goal. This was what the higher-ups wanted from day one. This is what the potential looked like, and the top was where Roman was destined to be. However, it was not that easy. What was supposed to be an easy path to the top, the man who was supposed to be a surefire lock, found himself in limbo for 6 years. For 6 years, the man found himself being booed out of arenas, being the most hated man in wrestling, being considered the most overpushed wrestler in decades, winning awards such as most overrated by the Wrestling Observer, the most hated wrestler of the year by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and
Jeez.
somehow turning that around to being awarded Best Box Office Draw in 2022. Roman Reigns clearly had all the tools, all the potential, but for 6 years he was public enemy number one for good reason. And the crazy part was, it wasn't even his fault.
It really wasn't. I didn't really mostly blame Roman for doing like you can't really like blame most of the talent for doing all this. This goes to just the people who are booking this, because like they have to go ahead of doing all this. They're the ones that had a meeting about this. They came up with the idea and they decided to roll with it. And for years, no one wanted to see him because he clearly was not ready. One of the things I found what was weird was that when the Shield broke up, he basically didn't bother trying to get avenged for the Shield. He immediately was jumped into the world title picture with no build up at all. Also it is one thing with I also don't really like to talk about like booking wise, because even when I talk about this, I still like to get immersed into just the athletes, the wrestling and all the wrestling. I really don't try to get it into all the booking and stuff. But I can, but I still, but you still, I still acknowledge about how he basically had no build up and was immediately pushed to the top with nothing going for him. Also, is another thing with baby faces that they do is that they always try to, like, I get it, it's the PG era, but not every single baby face who was originally like a badass immediately is now trying to be kid friendly and try to be a good sport, go by the rules. Like, no, that just devalues their whole character.
So let's go back and take a look at that 6-year span and take a look back at how bad it really was for Roman Reigns.
Let's get into it.
Sierra Hotel, India, Echo, Lima, Delta, Shield.
So you want to explore
Come
your
on.
dairy-free side?
No, I don't.
Meet Nature's
I don't
Find
care.
Five-Base Cream Cheese.
I don't care about your cream cheese.
And the story began right after the Shield broke up. It was obvious that the company had 3 main eventers on their hands, 3 single stars who would carry the company into the future, but there was never any doubt that Roman was clearly going to be number 1, that Roman was going to be the John Cena for the next generation. The problem was, though, they wanted him to be exactly like John Cena. Like, yeah, overnight after the Shield was over, Roman Reigns became a totally different person. Apparently, he had a split personality or something, because out of nowhere, he went from being normal to doing the most extra and annoying facial expressions every time he was in the ring. He went from never talking to having the most cringe dialogue you could imagine every single.
Also, why did they have to wear contacts? Like, why the contacts? I mean, sometimes it just kind of throws it. I really don't pay attention. I try not to really pay attention to it, but it does kind of throw me off with the reason of just why is he wearing blue contacts?
Week, Roman Reigns went from being the silent killer to a PG era kissing babies and hugging fat girls John Cena wannabe real quick. And as a result, by the end of the year, the resentment towards Roman Reigns was in full effect. Just like that, the company was pushing Roman Reigns to the moon, all while completely changing what the fans loved about Roman in the first place. He was going to the top before he or the fans were even ready for it, and they were making the same mistake they made 20 years prior. Basically, the company Dieseled Roman Reigns. Diesel in 1994 was awesome. The fans loved him as a quiet badass bodyguard to Shawn Michaels. Then out of nowhere, Vince makes him the champion, and overnight, Diesel went from being the quiet badass that everyone loved to wearing suits, going on talk shows, cutting promos every single week, having a personality, trying to be funny, and just being the clean-cut face of the company, the nice guy. But the issue was, nobody wanted that, and just when it looked like Diesel was the next big star of the company, he just ended up being average, and business just kept going down and down when Diesel was on top.
Yeah, I heard from multiple wrestling is how would I call them? No, I'll just say wrestling channels. I see like multiple wrestling channels, sometimes websites that say like he was like the worst WWE champion of like all time. I haven't. I mean, I never see the reign. I didn't see the reign, so I'm not gonna put my own opinion on it. But geez, is it really that bad? It was that bad. I mean, there had to been at least there had to been worse championship reigns than his.
And he never recovered until he went to WCW, became a heel, and became Kevin Nash. And here in 2014, it seemed like history was repeating itself, and everyone was noticing it.
Real quick, let me go back to this real quick. I would say
In
this:
2014, it seemed like history was
Roman Reigns' spear is one of my favorite spears, cause it's just like out of like everyone else, they're just like running until they bulldoze into you. With Roman, he actually jumps into it. That's why I like Roman's spear.
repeating itself, and everyone was noticing it. Roman Reigns was getting the corporate makeover. So they wanted him to smile more, they wanted him to make some more jokes and make the crowd laugh, and Roman Reigns, just 6 months after leaving the
I'm just saying, okay, but WWE needs to realize this. Any jokes they made, not gonna be funny. By WWE, mostly just Vince and really just bad writers. A lot of bad writers. Because a lot of these jokes are not even funny.
Him to make some more jokes and make the crowd laugh, and Roman Reigns, just 6 months
can
after
even get a
leaving the
chuckle out of
Shield,
some
was
of them.
about to win the Royal Rumble. Mind you, he had been injured and out of action from September to December, so after just 2 months of being on his own, getting injured and missing months of TV, he was brought back, and just like that, he was going to win the Royal Rumble. What for other stars like Cena, Austin, Rock took years to build, from mid-card titles to legendary feuds before they ever even sniffed the main event, for those stars, they built them up so much that the fans were begging for them to be the top star. But with Roman Reigns, it was so fast and the evolution was so rushed, the change was so drastic that it became the company was begging the fans to treat him like a top star. And of course, that did not work out. The boos just got louder and louder every single week, and this man was still wearing the same Shield outfit, coming out to the same Shield theme. They were trying to bank on any goodwill the Shield has.
I mean, to be honest, I don't really mind him wearing the vest. I actually do. I actually like the vest. I also kind of like the symbol. I kind of like the symbol, but the symbol does. It could be because the symbol reminds me of Spider-Man, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so maybe that's why.
Aesthetic had, Roman Reigns, to no fault of his own, was being booked as a total disaster, and the rest was just history. When he won the Royal Rumble and the crowd rejected him so bad that even The Rock was confused, it was a surprise to no one, except apparently the company. There was no need to rush him into that position, there was no need to set him up like that, but these idiots just kept digging the grave deeper and deeper. So he wins the Royal Rumble, he gets rejected, and what do? They make him look like a total sucker going into the main event of WrestleMania. No one will ever forget the legendary tug of rope to build up the WrestleMania main event, and just like that, the Roman Reigns character became a buffoon. The way he was presented, it was clear that this was a man to not be taken seriously. He was really a meme, which looking back was so tragic. Clearly this man had all the tools. Clearly he had what it took to be the man, but the company absolutely destroyed him, and they definitely set him up for failure. So when he didn't walk out of WrestleMania champion, you bet your ass the fans were happy, and then no matter what the company did, there was nothing that was gonna save him. As awesome as the match was at WrestleMania, realistically, he should have been the one being Rusev and ending the US title reign. He should have been tearing it up in the mid-cards so much so that the fans would get behind him and would eventually want him as world champion. But instead, they were just making it worse.
He's not wrong entirely.
Donate plasma today at
I don't care.
CSL Club.
Nope, don't care. It's not entirely wrong. Sorry, I'm gonna say something when I get to this ad. When it gets to this ad, and he will touch on this later. But one of the things I found weird about them, like with other champions, they had to supposedly work. I would say supposedly because when John Cena had the WWE Championship, it was getting flip-flop every 2 months. It went from John to Batista to JBL to back to Batista, back to John, back to Batista, back to John, back to Randy Orton to John. It just kept switching so many times. But anyways, with Roman, they made it way too obvious. It's kind of like coach. It's not like a coach, like coaches, or just a sports team in general. They basically will they pretend like we don't know who the favorite is when it's clearly obvious who the favorite is. Also, when multiple times he didn't win the world title because they kept backing themselves on the corner, at that point, just give him the championship. Do a Triple H style and just hand him the championship.
As 2015 was coming to an end, they would have him win the title and get screwed so they could get some sympathy for him. Plot twist, there was no sympathy to be found. They were down so bad, they even brought back a 70-year-old Vince McMahon to beef him, to try to recreate some Stone Cold magic like it's 1998 or something, just so maybe the crowd would get behind him. And you know what the crazy part was? Sometimes they actually would. Sometimes the crowd would cheer for him because Roman clearly had the potential to be a star. But they ruined it every single time. They would book him as a buffoon, yet at the same time they would push him to the top, so it just made no sense. Like, what were you guys doing? He was out here getting low blowed by a 70-year-old man, still doing that stupid ass smile, still trying to live off the Shield hype, so there was no sympathy. Why would there be sympathy for a guy who didn't have to overcome anything? It was like the weirdest thing. All this stuff that he should have been facing and overcoming, he did it after he had already main evented a WrestleMania. How does that make any sense? So of course, when he beat Triple H in the main event of WrestleMania in front of 100,000 people, nobody cared. Because once that stain was on him, sadly, there was nothing he could do.
Like I said, I got into wrestling in 2018, so clearly I didn't see this WrestleMania. But I hear from a lot of people that saying this is probably either one of the worst or the worst main event of all time. Because literally no one cared. Like, genuinely
Once the
no one
fans
cared.
saw him as a corny, overpushed buffoon, there was no coming back, and the company, instead of changing things up, they just kept digging the grave. So it didn't matter that he had great matches with AJ Styles, because the time for him to have great matches and get the fans behind him, that time was already over, and it didn't help that Seth Rollins the whole time was the Bret Hart to Roman's Diesel. In 2016, Seth Rollins became the guy for so many fans. All the fans that hated Roman's push, they just got behind Seth. As time went on, they did everything they could with Roman. They even delegated him to the mid-card so he could be US champion and grind it out before going to the main event, and they were just praying and hoping that maybe, just maybe, the fans would like him because he's not in the main event anymore. Nope. No matter what feuds, no matter what matches he had, no matter how good they were, Roman Reigns could have went back in time and stopped 9/11, but at the end of the day, it was still Roman Reigns. It was still the guy who everyone just perceived as a bozo. And things just got worse when he got sent back to the main event. For some reason, they thought the way to get Roman Reigns over again, to get the fans behind him once again on the main event scene, was to have the man that everybody hates beat up a 52-year-old man who happens to be probably the most beloved legend on the roster. For some reason, the company thought making Roman Reigns commit elder abuse was going to get him loved by the fans. So no, of course not. Instead, after beating up the old man,
I know there could be a counter argument for any other wrestler, but even then, it's still, even then, really the only elder that people will actually cheer to get beat up is probably Vince. And I think that's it. Anyone else, people will hate the person, unless the elderly person is like a heel. Then I can, like a heel manager, then yes. And also with this one, it kind of made no sense for him to beat him because the streak was already over, so this didn't really have any like stakes to it, so it really didn't matter. Now, once again, I try not to like focus on storyline wise for the most part. I don't really try to, because I don't know. Like, I may be a wrestling fan, but I have no idea what happens back. I don't know anything about how it's backstage. All I'm seeing is from a fan's perspective, not from a wrestler's nor a, what do you call it? A company's perspective.
Roman Reigns came out to Raw and was booed for 10 minutes straight. In one of the most iconic promos of the 2010s, Roman Reigns just stood there and the fans from around the world who had 3 years of built-up resentment to this man just let it all out. And if there was ever a time to make Roman Reigns heel, this was it.
This is my yard now.
But instead, they just kept digging the grave. So after beating up an old man didn't work, what did they do? They got desperate. They brought back John Cena for a B pay-per-view for No Mercy of all shows to put over Roman Reigns, to pass the torch quietly and no mercy for some reason.
And
just maybe the fans will somehow love Roman Reigns. The issue was though, a week before the match, John Cena absolutely murdered Roman Reigns on the microphone. Cena left him wasted, calling out everything the fans hate about Roman and his 3-year push, how he will never fit Cena's shoes, how he's just a corporate-made John Cena wannabe, how he can't cut a promo to save his life, and they just had Roman stand there and just take it. Looking like the biggest bozo I had ever seen in my life, and yeah, eventually he would stand up and talk and say, you know, Cena, you're a bitch, but the damage was done. So Roman beats Cena, Cena passes the torch, nah, it doesn't mean anything. Roman Reigns even reunites with the Shield with the sole purpose of, hey, this might get him cheered. No, and just like I said before, Roman Reigns was stuck in limbo.
real quick, every time I kind of find it interesting every time this happened. Every time the Shield try to team up, something always happened with one of them. And I think most of with like their last before their last time when Roman had to leave with leukemia. Now that is on now that now that like I will put a pass on it because that's disrespectful of like wow, so Roman really got leukemia because he because now he's teaming up with the Shield. Like, no, I'm not. No, that's too disrespectful. That's too disrespectful, and that's just disrespecting to anyone who has leukemia. So no, but besides that one, from any other one, whenever they teamed up, one of them either got injured or got suspended, and it was mostly Roman.
Titles, he would lose titles, have horrible WrestleMania main events, go back to the mid card, go back to the main event, but Roman was never able to become what he was destined for, no matter how hard the push was. Even though all the tools were right there, even though he had it in him, the company failed him. Hell, the most sympathy and love from the fans he got was when he announced that he had leukemia again, and
Bro, that's kind of is sad to the fact that this man is just doing his job. People are basically dogging on him, and the only time he ever gets sympathy is when he gets leukemia. Is when he announces not when he gets leukemia, when he announces leukemia returned.
when he came back from it, because he finally came off as a real person, as a relatable human, as Joe, as someone real, someone the fans could connect to, not a robot.
Off topic, I'm gonna say this is maybe a hot take, but I actually like the Red Universal Championship. I'm gonna stick by that.
Designed in Stamford, Connecticut in WWE headquarters to become the next John Cena. Roman Reigns' initial run ended with more of the same, a stupid feud with Shane McMahon of all people, a feud with Baron Corbin.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm surprised I get it, it is bringing to the past, but still. How has no one in any feud been like, you think I was supposed to be intimidated by you, Roman? Didn't you get beat up by Shane? Didn't you lose to Shane McMahon? I'm like, how has no one brought that up? I mean, heck, the most recent one was literally the day of recording this, which, what day is it again? It's Wednesday. Yesterday was SmackDown. As of recording this, and Baron Corbin finally announced that he was the last person to ever pin Roman Reigns. No one else talks about that.
Corbin over dog food, and was even supposed to wrestle Goldberg for the title at WrestleMania. It was literally a career limbo. And it was getting sad, okay? It was a man who had all the talent in the world, who should have been the guy who wasn't some corny buffoon that he was being forced to portray. And as time went on, we found out that he didn't want to say those stupid ass lines and jokes in the promos. He didn't want to make those stupid facial expressions in every promo.
I mean, let's be honest. No superstar, unless the wrestler knows or the person knows that their character is a joke character, then that is understandable. But since you are supposed to be the face of the company, and the guy that the higher ups want to be face of the company, you cannot have this man saying the most Looney Tune lines. Like lines from the 60s. You can't have this man saying suckering, succotash, son. Like, what? Like, what that, like, bro, if you said to anyone in real life, you are getting clowned on. No one would ever take you seriously. Ever. No one would. He was glad that he actually got control back, that he wanted to do his own thing. And then look what happened. You don't need to heavily script everything. Just get them some boilers points, or heck, even have some of them do what they want to do. Especially if the guy you want to do is the top guy.
Nah, instead it was the WWE, the booking, the creative, the vision that the higher-ups had put Roman in this position, and they handled it horribly since day one. And because of everything they did in the first year or two, the man himself and the fans had to suffer until 2020. But luckily for everyone involved, when Roman came back from his hiatus during the peak of the pandemic, he came back with a vengeance.
Yes.
He came back, and he came back on his terms. He wanted to do things his way, to become a heel, to work with Paul Heyman. No more creative telling him how to act, what facial expressions to do, this and that. It was about him, it was Paul Heyman, and all the corniness, all the years of him being presented as a clown, those days were over. And he went from being the top dog to the tribal chief, and the rest was history. So, how bad was the Roman Reigns run from 2014 until 2020? It was bad. Well,
It was extremely bad. I remember I saw a video from this one guy. He even said, like, jokingly, he said that he doesn't even acknowledge the fact that his 2014 to 2020 run didn't exist. He just thinks that at this is all a joke, by the way. He says that Roman Reigns just disappeared after the Shield breakup, and then he just came back in 20, and then he just came back as the tribal chief.
what was supposed to be the prime of his career was 6 years that the company and the fans like to pretend never happened. The fans got 6 years of being force-fed a corny version of Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns got rejected and booed out of arenas for 6 years. And there was no reason for any of that to happen, but the company just kept digging the grave. Roman Reigns has been so elite for the past few years that we almost kind of forgot how bad the first 6 years was. And even though it wasn't his fault, it's definitely something important to remember. The WWE missed out on so much magic for those 6 years, and they almost butchered the career of an all-time great. But luckily for them and everyone involved, it all worked out. And those 6 years are why the past 3 years have been so good for Roman Reigns. It's why the new attitude and the gimmick have hit so hard, because of how bad those years were. But that doesn't change the fact, and it shouldn't be forgotten, just how dirty the WWE did Roman Reigns from 2014 until 2020. It is honestly a miracle that it all worked out how it did.
Alright, that was a great video by Wrestling Gifts. They made a lot of good points, and I did pause for a lot of it and to make my own points. Sorry about that. But anyways, I hope you enjoy. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 100 subscribers, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.